Okay, everyone, I can see that we have our friends from the Equine Network as well as Shift Paradigm on with us. We are going to be talking about powerful strategies for engaging customers with meaningful messaging to drive revenue. Colin, Jason, Michael, it's so nice to see all of you. Thank you for being here today. Colin, I'd love to start with you. Will you talk to us a little bit about the Equine Network and your role there?
Yeah, thank you so much. Howdy, everybody. I'm Colin Bunn, and I'm the CTO here at Equine Network. And we like to say that Equine Network is really a collection of some of the world's most trusted brands and businesses, all dedicated to horses and horse sports. We do a lot of different things, really kind of a lot to mention here, but I'll just, as a little sample, some of the magazines that you might be familiar with, like Horse and Rider and Practical Horseman. We do competitions, some of the like World Series of Team Roping, which is probably the fastest growing amateur sport you've never heard of. We do products like horse fly sprays and different services for horses. The one thing we really don't do is thoroughbred racing. So for all of you out there on this webinar today, you might want to know about the Kentucky Derby results. We don't have an opinion about that. But we do everything else about horses. So if you love horses and you care about horses or you own them, you probably have had a relationship with Equine Network brands at one point already. That's us.
That's awesome. Horses are definitely on the mind for sure. I know I went to a fun derby party over the weekend, so hopefully some others out there got to take that in as well. Jason, thanks so much for being here. Will you tell us about your role at the Equine Network?
Yeah, absolutely. I joined Equine Network towards the end of last year, and I came in to really help oversee the consolidation and the enhancement of the data sets available across the lines of business and some recent acquisitions. So everything from helping the marketing department make the best use of that first party data to talking to the C-level about profitability and prediction for what's coming down the line. It's been really exciting and was a really good opportunity to get back to some family roots of people who spend more time with horses and in some of the dirt, and it's been great.
Oh, that's awesome. Michael, thank you for being here as well. Will you talk to us a little bit about Shift Paradigm, how we work together with the teams at Tealium, and then kind of what you were tasked to help with our friends at the Equine Network?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. So yeah, Michael Davis, I sit in what we call a corporate strategy seat. And we've been a kind of longtime partner with Equine Network as well as the Tealium group here, and really kind of helping to thread the needle a bit across what we'd consider strategy and process and the technology that's necessary. And then ultimately what we refer to as experience design. And when we think about all the things that you need in order to create kind of a personalized message and a very targeted, segment-led type of experience, we help organizations navigate the type of technology that's going to be necessary to make that all a reality. So we've been partnering with Equine, especially to using Tealium to kind of achieve that type of goal.
Thank you. Colin, paint the picture for us of the Equine Network a bit more. If you can kind of take us back a little bit in time and kind of talk about the way that all the lines of business work together, and maybe some of the challenges that you were facing as an organization, and what were some of the goals that led you to really start focusing your shift in digital transformation to that first party data strategy?
Yeah, would love to. So we jokingly refer to ourselves as a 20-year-old startup. The business itself has been around, or parts of it have been around for a long time. And we represent a lifetime of acquisitions and roll-ups, and probably not unlike people who are on the webinar today. There's many different lines of business which are vestiges of old standalone businesses. And they each brought with them their own customer data, their own infrastructure, their own marketing habits. We were carved away from another parent company last year. And so we stood on our own 2 feet last year and needed to bring together all that customer intelligence so that we could make sense of our business as a single unified brand and voice. What's interesting about our business, though, is I don't think our tactics are really to speak as Equine Network. We're one of those brands that you probably won't hear from the Equine Network. You'll hear from one of our subsidiaries, one of our sub brands. And so our strategy was to build the infrastructure to support ingesting all the customer data from those various businesses, feeding it into a system like Tealium, and then sending that data back into our data systems and back into Tealium, creating what we sometimes refer to as a little bit of a customer flywheel. So we can learn about our customers as those brands operate independently from one another, but we look down upon it as the Equine Network and try to make smart decisions from all that information that we're gathering all the time. We're lucky enough to have Jason come on board last year to help us provide some, real vision for how the system should work. So I'm sure Jason might have some input on, what we should do with all this information. Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. The focus for us is really, again, with the deprecation of cookies and the conversation around the the alarm bells and the supposed demise of third-party tracking. We really sat down and said, okay, what do we in our organization do in order to find the people who want to spend time outside doing these horse-related events and buying some of these horse-related products. And what we came around to is we're really sitting on this some of the strongest data and strongest signals just in the market, and how do we use that not just for ourselves but also our advertisers and partners to make the lives easier and better of our customers, whether they've been with us for 20 years or they've been with us for a few months, right? And so the focus has really been to centralize the accessibility of that data and begin to enhance the usability of it by making it available to the lines of business to determine not just profitability, but take communications to people who may not know about the other services that we have, or may not understand the difference between the things that our lines of business do and what they might be more used to out in the market. And we're getting there. We're already with the work that Michael and team have helped us move on. We're already able to take audiences from across our lines of business and address them with new and interesting messages that make their lives better. And we're seeing results from it. And we're hoping to continue to advance that over the next few years.
That's awesome. Michael, I'd love to hand it to you. Talk a little bit about, if you just want to build on, Jason and Colin's take on the last couple of years, last year, and then speak to, if you will, about the expansion of privacy regulation and how the team is taking steps to address that, and weave that into the customer experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the road that we're on is incredibly exciting. I think, as Colin mentioned, you have this kind of flywheel of data, and you're more or less closing the loop on a lot of things that are happening. And as we're able to start aggregating that data together and applying good data science to that, and we start to build audiences where we have some predictability in modeling, that really kind of helps us act in a very kind of like forward thinking way, and getting less reactive, more proactive based on how people are behaving. And the fun part is, of course, as Colin mentioned, like the ability to kind of speak to people within the brands that they're used to, instead of having this overarching like one size fits all message. You find a place where these people are kind of comfortable and have trust built there, and we can communicate within those lines of business. I think as privacy becomes more of a forward part of all of our lives, I think the desire and the need, I guess, so the importance of owning your own first party data and owning the relationship that you have and owning that tracking information is going to be really, really critical, obviously, so that you can act on it as necessary. But you need to have that understanding of what people are doing. You're not relying on other sources of data to give you that information. The more you can own that yourself, and the more that we can bring that into our own architecture, the more we can really take the time to analyze that data, and we're not expecting other people to kind of slice and dice and serve it up to us in a view, right? We have more of that control. So I think as organizations navigate what is impending cookie doom, as everybody keeps talking about, right? Like the ability to own that data is really critical for those reasons, of course. But as I was saying, the analytics side of this is really, really critical, is if you want to get to that type of hyper personal, right message, right time, cross right channel, all of those things that everybody wants to talk about from stage. To make that happen, you really have to have the right architecture, and you have to have the data. You got to own it yourself. So I think we're on the path here with Equine. I love where we're going with all of this. And I feel like as we continue to evolve and partner with them, we'll start to see more of the fruits of this labor.
Awesome. Jason, I know you mentioned there are some pretty significant variations in the different audiences that you engage with across all of the lines of business. talk to us a little bit about some of those audience segments and how you go about personalizing the experience for this wide variety of audiences.
Yeah, that's right. I think, first and foremost, as Colin and Michael have both kind of put it to, or have put some words to, our audience is relatively niche, and they crave authenticity across the board, right? They can. We were joking about this previously, and to be crass about it, they can smell the BS a mile away, or in our case, the HS, right? They know when you're not saying something that's authentic to them, and we tend to cater more to folks who are on the Western side of the business, although we do have some coverage on the English side. If we take something, creative or an experience or an offer from the English side and try to apply it on the Western side, just does not come off as authentic, and it's going to fall flat right away. It's just we're not going to see any success there. I mean, and then in addition to that, even on the Western side, we have competitions and events, that we own, that we operate, and that we run. And the people who participate in those events are pretty significantly different from the people who read a lot of our media, right? And so those differences can be as wide as, primarily on the roping side of our events tend to be a little bit younger and a little bit more male than the folks on the media side, who tend to be a little bit older and a little bit more female. There's also some differences that we can see coming in on social issues and other issues that they care about, that mean something to them. And it helps inform the way that we talk to them, but it also informs, as a company, what are we evaluating for success for our business going into the future? What do these people care about? So it's everything that we do is like a niche of a niche, and has to be pretty highly targeted to the individual that receives it if we want to see any success.
Colin, I'd love to get your take on, what was that need that really led you to, we need a CDP, we need something to help us. And now post implementation, what are some of the key changes that you see in, where the business is today versus where you were before a CDP?
Yeah, that's a good question. And full disclosure, I don't have a ton of experience engineering CDPs from scratch. I've not been in Equine Network long enough to know other solutions that might have been considered before I arrived. But I will say that initially, we look at it as a CRM problem. It's like learning about our customers, deepening our relationship with our customers, making sure a horse is actually at the center of our attention. And then the people around that horse are actually secondary to that, because there's many other kinds of customers related to a horse, like a trainer or an owner, or someone who might be just moving a horse from location to location. And so we had that kind of relationship building we needed to do. And then we also had our kind of marketing end of it, like how to make sense of, a customer maybe who's an existing customer on one of our brands, who's also a customer of another one of our brands. How do we intensify that relationship? And when you look at it that way, when you kind of step out of just a relationship, because obviously horses don't surf the internet, don't sign up on web forums, don't receive direct mail, you realize that this isn't just a CRM problem. This is a CDP problem, that we need to create a layer of intelligence on top of our customers that we couldn't kind of frankly get out of a Salesforce. And I looked at that as a lot of those traditional platforms, whether they're marketing platforms or they're CRM platforms, want to be CDPs. They're like wannabe CDP platforms. And I felt like in conversations with Michael and the rest of the Shift Paradigm folks, we learned that there's something sort of native to CDP platforms, and that they understand where their job ends and where marketing platforms begin. And similarly, where CRMs might need to play and where they stop. And I think it just fit that need really precisely. And then since we've now implemented so much, we're really, I think, yielding the benefits of thinking of it this way, because what it's done, in my mind, is it's allowed our individual businesses to continue to use the CRMs that they know and love, but feed the CDP and allow us to exploit kind of the oil, the gold that's in there, and make sense of it and feed it back into the individual business units. So that's really exciting. I mean, I think Jason's recently done some stuff that finally we're able to make sense of all this and benefit from moving the intelligence into a CDP and not letting it sit in the individual business unit CRMs, if that makes any sense. Jason, I don't know if you can point to some specific examples now, but I just really like what you've been able to achieve recently, preparing audiences, say for marketing, that we couldn't do before.
Yeah, I think the best example is that we have two lines of business that actually ask our customers or ask their customers for confirmation that they actually own a horse, which you would think in a lot of what we do, you can make, it's a safe assumption in some of the lines of business that they probably own a horse. But we have such an expansive media footprint that we don't know that just because you signed up for a magazine that you own a horse. Maybe you just really like learning about barrel racing on the weekend and kind of keeping up with that. But we've been able to take those signals, right, and with the help of Shift Paradigm and connecting these profiles in Telium, create a view of the individuals that we have and whether or not they've confirmed that they own a horse, and create audiences that are very useful for other lines of business to provide services to horse owners that are relevant. So, we have a fly spray, or I'm sorry, fly predator product. If you own a horse on your property, might be useful to keep the flies away from them, right? And if we can validate that you're not currently buying that from us, hey, here you go. Here's an offer. We want to let you know about it. We're able to do that now, and it's been very exciting to get that going in the last couple of months.
Michael, what is the team working on now? What's that direction where we're headed for future? What are we excited about?
Yeah, I think there's like two major areas where I feel like we can start to really capitalize on some of the architecture here. I think alluded to it a little bit earlier, the idea of really great analytics, and we can really start talking about true data science and start to look at predictable models where you're starting to see people with different profiles and starting to connect together, not just what would be considered attribute data, but you start thinking about behavioral data that ultimately matters. I mean, in this particular case, there's 30 plus websites involved in this network. And so you start thinking about how people are behaving in relationship to these different brands. Like there's an incredible amount of goodness to be extracted there. So there's some continued work that we're doing there. And then that directly feeds our ability to start doing experience design. When you think about, okay, this particular person, as Jason was alluding to, has a horse and they participate in this brand and product, but they don't participate in another one, but we're seeing them spend a lot of time in this particular magazine or video subscription service. There is a really good opportunity for us to start placing the right messaging in front of them around other brands and other products. We got to do that in a smart way. Trust in this particular business is paramount. People don't want to be, overblown with messaging. They don't want to feel like they've been, hit by a big corporate organization to get them to buy all kinds of stuff. They want a trusted partner to give them recommendations. And so as we extract some of that goodness around analytics and start to be mindful and careful about how we want to design that experience, we now have the infrastructure to place that type of messaging in the right places to those right people, and then really kind of close the loop on the analytics, right? Where we really have an understanding of how well did that design, how well did that message actually land? What kind of impact did we actually see there? So I think as we start to can close more of this data loop, if you will, I think we'll really start to see the fruits of that labor. We'll really start to see how some of this stuff comes into reality and what kind of impact we can have. So both of those areas, I think we have a lot of opportunity to continue work, and I'm really excited for where we're going from now.
As are we. Colin, I know you mentioned when we spoke earlier in the week that the Equine Network doesn't have a huge dev team. I know that there are a lot of folks watching today that are in a similar position. And, we always say that collaborating with partners is one of the most powerful ways that companies can get the most value out of their CDP. Talk to us about the way that the Equine Network team is laid out. What are some of those key pieces of talent that teams have to have internally? And then where can you look externally to a partner to really round out the full team?
Yeah, well, so we do run lean, and each business unit has their own technical support staff, whether that's in-house or outsourced teams. So that can complicate things too. I mentioned, I think, to you before that the motto I'm trying to bring to our technology decision making is data, video, mobile first. And so when we look at the picture that way, we're trying to build resources to support each one of those verticals, so to speak, as far as our technology goes. In the case of our data, though, we relied heavily on Chip Paradigm and their advice and kind of their team of experts to stand up our data lake, what we're calling our data lab, which is really the source of truth for our business, but also the source of information for Tealium from our offline data and information about customers that might be coming in from other sources other than TIQ. And then Tealium itself we have some support people from Shift who help there, but Jason's become our kind of local expert. Our long-term plan is to invest in more of an analyst to kind of support all of our data initiatives across Tealium and other systems that we might be using. But I'm not alone in saying I'm sure people on this webinar, technical resources are hard to find and not always easily deployed only on one platform. They kind of have to be omnivores. And we're lucky enough to work with Chip Paradigm here, who's presented and offered to us a lot of different kinds of resources and basically bought us time to figure out what we needed to hire for ourselves or the next generation of team members inside Equine Network to build forward. I think that just as a final comment on this, I think what we're learning is that what you think the resources you need today aren't always the resources you need in 3 months. And so it's been helpful for us to throw work at Chip Paradigm to allow us to get over that next hurdle. And our long-term investment as far as resources will go will probably be more dedicated to kind of our overall data program, because Tealium is just a part of it. And we're interested in, building data services as a bigger part of our business, actually.
Jason, is there anything you'd add to that?
Well, I mean, I could go on about that for hours, but I do think, but from a talent perspective, my view is definitely that when it comes to owning the data, my view, you want to keep that as close to you as you can. When it comes to making use of the data, it's easier to outsource it, right? It's easier to take it somewhere else and let people who do that stuff really well do that for you. To Colin's point, Shift Paradigm has really brought a variety of talent to us, and we own the first party data, we own the collection, we own that analysis. But when it starts getting into, really needing those, elbow patch wearing PhDs to sit down and crunch the numbers, they have them and we can work with them. But we don't necessarily want to keep them on staff all the time ourselves, right? So that's been really helpful to figure out what we do best and have the breathing room to just focus on our core competency and work with really smart people who make it better over time.
So Jason, since you've been on board over the last year, what are some of those successes when you look back at where you were coming in and where you are today? How has that business moved forward to date?
Oh, I mean, people asked me in December when I got there, but when to do things for them, and it wasn't possible. Just simple questions like, how many horse owners do we have across the network? I said I don't know, and I don't know where to turn. And I talked to Colin and I talked to Shift and we figured it out. There was a lot of stuff that was underway when I showed up and they started opening that stuff up. As pertains to what we've changed since December and what we're moving to in the future, we've definitely also come a long way in starting to put ideas around how we turn into more of a data services company and how we can use our data to benefit our clients, our advertisers, right? And how we can potentially turn data into a revenue stream, which is something that this organization never thought of before. And we've really made strides in that regard. So we've centralized this data. We're starting to see the value of it. And now we're kind of out in the market talking to people, asking what's useful, what do you want from us, and determining whether or not we can do it. And it's been a big change in a few months, frankly.
Michael, you have a unique perspective in, working with the Equine Network, but also a variety of other companies as well. Knowing what you know today about the implementation of a CDP, what advice do you have for folks who have joined us today? What should they be thinking about? What should they be preparing for?
Yeah, I think Colin touched on this a little bit. I think recognizing that a CDP is part of a larger ecosystem is really important, right? I think, if you think about how the history of marketing automation has come into play in the market, and a lot of people are used to kind of compartmentalized type of platforms. I think what we have to recognize is when we start thinking about data systems and the ability to close the loop, as we've been talking about, like that involves more tools than just CDP, right? That involves database, that involves analytics tools, that involves CDP as an engine, that involves the marketing side of that and being able to deploy against those experiences. Then of course, closing the loop on the data back. So when you think about, standing up a CDP in your organization, you have to think about it in terms of that larger ecosystem. Do you have all the pieces for all of that? And you have to manage the ecosystem as one, right? You can't say, all right, we've got one person who does just my marketing, and one person is going to manage this. And we have to start bringing together those teams to recognize that in order to really have that type of continuity of data throughout, you have to really manage the ecosystem together. And so as you're thinking about, putting CDPs into organizations, and as people are considering those types of things, I just encourage them to make sure that they've got the right pieces for their use case, and they recognize what they're really trying to capitalize, what data that they're really trying to use, and how they're trying to use it, and who in their organization do they expect to actually manage and touch this information. Because all of those are dimensions to consider as you start selecting tools and you start building out these ecosystems. And so I think the most important thing to think about is that this is not just another compartmentalized tool that you bolt on. This is about creating a cohesive ecosystem.
Awesome. Okay, really fun question from the audience. I'll let everyone take a stab at this one. Best horse name. There's some really good ones. And you all, I'm sure, have heard a lot. We're putting our Yellowstone hats on. What's the best horse name?
I personally am on the I like kind of slightly nefarious sounding names, right? So I think was I Am Midnight or Call Me Midnight, I think was in the jury. That just sounds kind of like there's a thief in the night somewhere. That excites me. I'm a big fan.
I love that. What about you, Colin?
I was going to say, I saw recently at our U.S. team roping championship, somebody named their horse the Boss, which because they're all cowboys, so they like to trash talk a little bit. But horse names are a little bit like boat names in that there's so much inside joking happening. It's sometimes hard to know what's meant for public consumption and what's just somebody's joke with their buddy.
So true. Michael, what have you seen?
Oh man, I not as close to the horse community as I probably should be, I think. Although recently I inherited a horse, believe it or not. It's kind of a whole story there. I now officially am a horse owner, but not kind of by default. Yeah, I like some of the older names from like Seattle Slew and some of those that are just kind of like something about it is like, where did you come up with that? If you look at obviously we're watching the Derby over the weekend, like who picked these names? But some of them are really fun. So I should probably have more of an opinion about that one, but I do find stuff like Seattle Slew to be cool.
Michael, we'll have some fly predators to sell you.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. Like, what do I do with this thing, guys?
You just became the target. All right.
Yeah, right.
Awesome. Colin, Jason, Michael, thank you all so much. This was a fascinating conversation, very timely, so insightful. I learned a ton. I know our audience did as well. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We value our partnership with all of you greatly and really appreciate you spending your time with us.
Yeah, great.
Thank you, Lauren.
Awesome.
Nice to talk to everybody today. Bye now.
Yeah, thanks for having us.